I didn't notice the foundation's name the first time I saw it. It was just another line in a queue of flagged returns at 8:11 a.m. on a Monday, the kind of hour when the coffee still burns and the fluorescent lights make everyone look like they haven't slept in years. I'm a senior forensic auditor with the Internal Revenue Service, Criminal Investigation Support, detailed to LBNI for charitable entity anomalies. My docket was a neat grid: EANs, filing statuses, variance notes, algorithmic outliers. A routine triage. The alert code was simple: self-dealing indicators plus related party transactions plus offshore correspondence. I clicked the EIN. The entity, Riverlight Family Foundation Incorporated. A 501(c)(3) public charity on paper, 3 years old, flush with donor money that moved like a bird you couldn't track with your eyes, here, then gone. I opened the PDF package. Form 990. Schedule L, Transactions with Interested Persons. Schedule O, Narrative. Bank statements, vendor rosters, grant letters. A separate folder labeled Management Approvals. I skimmed the first approval. And stopped. The digital signature block at the bottom, the one that authorized a $1.2 million transfer to a donor-advised fund in Denver, carried my name. My name. The certificate hash mimicked the structure of my PIV-derived credential, a long alphanumeric string that should only live on a federal machine behind a login sequence I knew by muscle memory: the pause, the card tap, the PIN. I read the block twice, then blew the PDF up until the pixels trembled. The signature looked perfect, down to the date-time stamp format our office used in internal memos and the slightly misaligned "I" in my last name that our template had never fixed. I checked the metadata. Creator, DocuSign-like vendor I knew we didn't use. IP address, masked through a hosting provider I'd seen a dozen times in identity theft cases. The approval note above the signature was worse, reviewed by Senior Auditor Eva Reyes, consistent with Treasury guidance. My throat tightened. I'm not Reyes. I'm Elena Ward. I scrolled. A second approval, $450,000 in consulting services to Lumen Strategy Partners LLC, a vendor with a P.O. box in Miami and wiring instructions to a bank in Valletta, Malta. And another, $320,000 for program services outreach, paid to Halcyon Emerging Markets, Limited in Belize City. Every approval noted my review. Every one bore my signature. The foundation's registered address sat in a suburb I knew like the lines on my palm. The board chair's name was familiar in the wrong way: Michael Ward. My father. For a full minute, the room compressed into soundless light. Desks. Screens. Colleagues sliding into their chairs with cups and badge lanyards. A printer coughing in the corner. I heard none of it. The signature blocks stared back. Not just my name, my federal authority, as if he could print integrity on demand and staple it to a fraudulent ledger. I locked my screen, took my credential, and walked to the small conference room by the fire door. Closed it. Saturday. Breathed. Protocol lives in your bones after a decade in this job. Conflict checks. Recusal triggers. Immediate notifications. I opened my notebook and started the list: conflict of interest disclosure, immediate. Escalate to supervisor, verbal plus written. Preserve evidence, no contact with the target or related parties. TIGTA notification, identity misuse, credential spoofing. IRSCI intake, potential criminal referral, 26 U.S.C., Section 7206, 18 U.S.C., Section 1028A, 18 U.S.C., Section 1956/1957. I dialed my supervisor first. I need to pull Riverlight from my queue, I said. Conflict of interest. I know the board chair. I didn't say he raised me. I didn't say he taught me to sign my name. Understood, she said, voice flat in the precise way of people who've had to be careful a long time. Are you in a position to brief? Yes. I swallowed. There's also an identity misuse element. My signature appears on their approvals. Silence. Then, you're in the glass room? Yes. Don't move. I'm coming with CI. By 9:02 a.m., 2 IRSCI special agents and my supervisor were in the room. I laid out the packet. Transactions like beadwork on a wire, money in, through, and out again until the origin forgot it had ever existed. I walked them through the signature blocks, the offshore routing, the shell vendors, the donor-advised fund that looked like a giving pool but operated like a delay switch. We mapped it on the whiteboard. Patterns classic, one agent said. Schemes donations, parks funds and DAF, bills sham, program services to related shells, wires to Malta and Belize, repatriates through a domestic LLC under the guise of a grant subrecipients. Schedule L shows related party transactions, my supervisor noted. But they narrative papered it on Schedule O, arm's length consulting. She looked at me. How sure are we about the signature? I tapped the PDF hash. The certificate's a forgery, but it references the structure of my PIV. Someone spoofed the look and timing. Also, the approval email headers cite a domain similar to our internal naming convention. 2 characters off. CI wrote fast. So we've got false statements on a return, 26 USC, Section 7206, aiding and abetting, wire fraud, 18 USC, Section 1343, money laundering, 18 USC, Section 1956-1957, aggravated identity theft, 18 USC, Section 1028A, tied to federal credentials, and potentially self-dealing excise penalties for a private foundation if it's not truly public, 26 USC, Section 4941. It files as a public charity, I said. But contributor concentration looks like 3 donors. Functionally, it's operating like a private foundation without the guardrails. And the board is family. He circled the board roster. Family foundations are legal. Laundering through them isn't. Conflict protocol, my supervisor said softly, as if reminding me to breathe. You're recused. Effective immediately. We're walling you off. I nodded. I understand. I understood too much. My father's signature sat 3 lines above mine, jaunty and decisive. He'd always been that way, both generous and exacting, the kind of man who would spend a Saturday fixing your sink while lecturing you about interest compounding. He loved charities. He loved the feeling of shaking hands in photographs. He loved what money could do when it wore a halo. And he had taken my name, my badge, my work, my oath, and pressed it like a stamp into the center of a lie. At 11:37 a.m., Tigta joined us, a woman with eyes that had watched rooms like this turn and turn again. We handed over the packet. She studied the signature, then my face. You will have an urge to call him, she said. To explain the gravity. To offer him a way out. Do not. Identity theft tied to federal authority is not a family matter. It is a felony. I won't contact him, I said. My voice sounded steady. It surprised me. She nodded. Good. We'll take it from here. CI will open a case file. We'll coordinate with DOJ tax and, if warranted, public integrity. Your role now is to stay clean, preserve your devices, and document any attempted contact. What about Riverlight's current disbursements? My supervisor asked. Freeze orders will move after probable cause is papered, the CI agent said. Banks will hold. DAF will lock. We'll need a warrant for the registered office and the third-party vendor's server, whoever spoofed the credential. And if the board chair reaches out to her? Tigta asked, looking at me again. I recited the rule like catechism. I'll document and forward any outreach to Tigta and CI. No substantive response. She smiled without softness. Duty isn't a feeling. It's a set of actions. Stick to them. They built the case in clean steps. Subpoenas to the banks. Preservation letters to the donor-advised fund and the e-signature vendor. Administrative summonses for the Malta and Belize transfers, routed through MLAT channels. Interviews with former staffers at the foundation who had dared to be honest and then been replaced by people who didn't ask questions. The SARS began to land, suspicious activity reports from compliance officers who had sensed heat and filed quietly. The pattern grew teeth. Wire descriptions that didn't match program work. Invoices with verbs and no nouns. Capacity building for underserved markets via shell company with no staff. Research stipends to a related LLC whose mailing address was my father's hunting cabin. They called the pattern what it was, layering. Integration. Backstopping the optics with tiny, photogenic grants while the bulk of the cash traveled overseas and came back in a suit and tie. 3 weeks in, CI requested a search warrant. The affidavit carried the weight of numbers and the simplicity of a bruise, forged credentials, false returns, laundered funds. A magistrate judge signed. The morning of the search, they asked me to remain off-site. It wasn't that they didn't trust me. It was that they trusted the process more. I watched the clock instead, listening to my apartment's quiet, hearing only the hum of a refrigerator that had never done anything wrong in its life. At 6:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. Not my personal number. The emergency line we keep for family notifications. It was my mother. Elena, she whispered, as if noise might change the facts, there are people here. Agents. Badges. They say they have a warrant. My chest felt hollow, like the air had been taken out to fit something heavier inside. You should let them in, Mom. She cried then, a sound not of surprise but of betrayal. How could you do this to us? Us. The word was the oldest story in our house, family as alibi, family as shield. I closed my eyes and imagined Tigta's expression, patient, inexorable. I didn't do this to you, I said. Dad did. There was a scuffle on the line, and then my father's voice. Calm. Warm. The voice of a man who could sell you a bridge and leave you thanking him for the view. Ellie. We should talk. I wanted to say that I don't go by Ellie at work, that nicknames are for kitchens and childhoods and not for mornings when federal agents serve warrants. I said nothing. He filled the silence. This is a misunderstanding. Your colleagues are inflamed by optics. We can clear it up. Come over. You can explain to them, I'm recused, I said. A beat? From your own family? From your foundation investigation. The formality put space between us. There are forged approvals bearing my name. That's absurd, he said gently. You've always been so cautious, so careful. If my people accidentally used a template, they used my credential. My voice didn't rise. It didn't know how. A federal signature tied to a PIV chain. That's identity theft. Ellie, don't dramatize. We're on the same side. We're building hospitals. Scholarships. You know what charity does. I taught you that. You taught me how to sign my name, I said. Not how to steal it. He exhaled, and for a second I heard the man who had held my handlebars until I believed in balance. You always were righteous, he murmured. It's a beautiful quality until it isn't. I didn't answer. Another voice came on the line, professional and precise. Ms. Ward? This is Special Agent Dana Croft with IRSCI. Your parents are fine. We're executing a search warrant at Riverlight's registered office located on their property. Your father is speaking with counsel. For the record, please do not come here. I won't, I said. Thank you. And Ms. Ward, your father's counsel has been advised not to contact you regarding substantive case matters. If you receive further calls, forward them to me and to Tigta. The line went dead. I sat in the quiet until the refrigerator hummed again. Duty is a set of actions. I made tea I didn't drink. I wrote the call log precisely. 6:12 a.m. caller, mother, unknown if on speaker. Subject, warrant execution. Content, emotional appeal, then transfer to father. Father, attempted to solicit intervention, minimized forgery, alignment language, same side. Response, stated recusal, identity theft parameters. Agent intervention followed. Logged and sent to case team. The public part began 3 days later, when the foundation tried to unfreeze funds by suing the DAF. The filing hit the docket hit the press. I didn't watch the news. I read the motions. My father had hired a law firm that could make treason look like a tax credit. They argued administrative overreach and temporary procedural defects. CI answered with numbers. The U.S. Attorney's Office answered with charges. The indictment landed on a Thursday at 2:47 p.m., interesting how lives break on specific minutes. Count 1, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, 18 U.S.C., Section 1349. Count 2, wire fraud, 18 U.S.C., Section 1343. Count 3, conspiracy to launder monetary instruments, 18 U.S.C., Section 1956. Count 4, aggravated identity theft, 18 U.S.C., Section 1028A, for using my digital credential on 4 separate approval documents. Counts 5 to 7, filing and aiding the filing of a false return, 26 U.S.C., Section 7206, 1, and 2. The forfeiture allegation read like a map, balances, accounts, the cabin, the office, a line item simply labeled, watch collection. He turned himself in. He smiled in the photographs. That's a thing he does, smile when other men would grind their teeth. He believes in performance as a kind of sanctity. He wore the blue suit I'd always liked on him. It used to make him look like the sort of father other children envied. Mom called again that night. The first question she asked wasn't whether I was all right. It was whether I understood what prison would do to him. He has a heart condition, she said, he is not a criminal. Criminals are what criminal statutes describe, I said. Not what we feel. You would send your father to prison, she whispered. No, I said. He sent himself. Silence stretched. Then she said the quiet thing loudly. If you had a different job, none of this would have happened. I let the words stand in the room until they dried and cracked. If he had different ethics, I said, none of this would have happened. She hung up. I wrote that down, too. Trials are long because truth is a meticulous thing. It insists on dates and times and serial numbers. It doesn't accept the fable of intent without the ledger of fact. DOJ brought in the bank officers. They brought in the IT vendor from Denver who swore he'd never seen a charity treat a DAF like a pressure valve. They brought in a young accountant who had quit Riverlight after 6 months and saved every email because something in her had survived HR training intact. They brought in me, not as an investigator, but as a victim witness for the identity theft count. The courtroom looked smaller than it does on television. My father's hair had gone a little thinner at the temple. His counsel wore pinstripes so sharp they might have drawn blood to the surface if you touched them. When I took the oath, my hand didn't shake. The prosecutor's questions were clean and narrow. State your name and position. Describe the credential referenced in the exhibit. Is this your signature? Did you authorize its use? No, I said, each time, as if I were laying bricks across a river, building a way to the other side where the law lives, where my life could continue. How did you feel when you saw your father's foundation documents with your signature? The defense objected, relevance, and the judge sustained. It didn't matter how I felt. Feelings or weather. Findings or climate. A week later, the jury came back. Guilty on all counts. The judge's words were not unkind. They were simply true. You repurposed the optics of charity to facilitate crime. You used the authority of a daughter's oath as camouflage. The law cannot pretend that families should immunize such conduct. He sentenced my father to 9 years. The identity theft counts carried 2 mandatory years, consecutive. The laundering and wire fraud did the rest. The court ordered restitution and forfeiture. The watch collection went to auction, the cabin, too. Riverlight's exemption was revoked. A notice appeared on the IRS website, automatic revocation list. It's public. Anyone can look at it. I did, once, at 3:03 a.m., and then closed my laptop and went back to sleep. Mom didn't speak to me for 4 months. When she called, she didn't apologize. She asked whether I could talk to someone about early release. I told her I didn't talk to someone's. I follow rules. Doing the right thing doesn't destroy families, I said. It reveals them. She exhaled like a person learning to breathe in new gravity. He always said you were unbending, she murmured. He meant it as a flaw. It's a spine, I said quietly. I need it to stand. 3 years later, I was promoted, Senior Supervisory Forensic Auditor, a team of 14, a docket of cases that crossed oceans and came back wearing clean shirts. I got a commendation from the commissioner for a case that collapsed a network of impact funds that impacted nothing but the balance sheets of men with multiple passports. The ceremony was short. I like it that way. My apartment has nothing grand in it. A chair that holds me. A table that fits the room. A wall of casebooks and a plant I'm trying not to kill. I drink tea that doesn't cool before I finish it now. Sometimes on Sundays, I walk by a small clinic 2 neighborhoods over. A real charity funded by people who sign their own names and mean them. I don't go inside. I let the sight of it be the kind of quiet I can live with. Every few months, a letter comes from a federal facility with my father's name on it. The first 3 lines are always love and memory. The next paragraph always leans toward strategy, admire your courage, explain the misunderstanding, help me draft something for the parole board that speaks to your integrity as proof of my rehabilitation. I read them. I file them. I don't respond. I don't not respond out of cruelty. I do it because some lessons have to survive the absence of rescue. People believe family is the place where truth goes to be softened. I believe family is the first institution that teaches you whether truth matters at all. Mine taught me both things, in that order. Duty is heavy until you carry it long enough to discover it's the only thing that keeps you upright when the wind changes. On my desk at the office, there's a rubber band ball made of blue bands that used to hold packets of bank statements. It's ugly and perfect and useless except as a reminder, everything is layers until you cut into it. Money. Motive. Love. You can stack anything and call it structure. You can call a machine a charity. You can call a signature a favor. You can call a theft a misunderstanding. You can call a daughter a problem when she refuses to fix the shape of the truth to fit the shape of your need. The law doesn't care what you call it. Neither do I. I care about the numbers that line up and the ones that don't. I care about the signatures that belong to the hands that made them. I care about the quiet click of the PIV reader when I tap my badge and the door opens because it knows me, because I am who I say I am. I care about doing my job. That's enough. And when people ask me, always softly, as if fear might spook the answer, how I could do what I did to my father, I tell them the only true thing I know, I didn't do anything to him. I did something for the work. The work is honest. It doesn't clap. It doesn't love you back. It doesn't help with the chairs when the ceremony ends. It just asks you to keep choosing it, over and over, under oath, in fluorescent light, at 2:47 p.m. on a Thursday, when your name looks like proof you didn't give. I keep choosing. Because doing the right thing doesn't destroy families. It reveals them.